We'll do it as usual.
Andrei's father had said the night before at the inn.
I'll go ahead and speak with the monks. I'll engage them in conversation to lead me to the library. Once I find the codex, I'll take it for myself. And if I find anything else we can turn into money, I'll take that too. Then I'll make a run for it and bump into your mother, who will pretend to be hiding something. And in the meantime, what will happen in the meantime, my son?
You run past my hiding place and toss me the loot. Then you go through the door and pretend to fall to the ground. While the others search you and my mother without finding anything, I slip away to our campsite with the loot.
The boy has a natural talent,
Said Andrei's father with a wide smile.
You're teaching your own son to steal.
Said the mother.
Stealing is a sin and has nothing to do with science.
We will steal to obtain the necessary knowledge.
Replied Andrei's father.
One injustice cancels out another. That's a scientific fact.
What gets canceled out are opposites.
Said Andrei's mother.
Water extinguishes fire. A full plate fills an empty stomach. Righteousness triumphs over injustice. So,
You know nothing about the secrets of science.
Andrei's father said, and began to calculate how many stars were favorable to his purposes. Andrei heard him murmuring to himself.
If the codex were here, that would be important. If I were to find it tomorrow, all the wisdom of the world, all the wisdom of the devil, the secrets that Moses brought from Mount Sinai and did not reveal.
Father!
What?
Codex?
The father of Andrei wasn't a bad person. If he were, he would have left his wife and son years ago and pursued his dreams alone. Perhaps he was a thief when he didn't receive willingly what he considered necessary, and perhaps he was a scammer when people were naive enough to be scammed by him. But his actions were only driven by a sublime goal, scientific knowledge. He raised his gaze and contemplated his son. And as always, he was unable to repress the pride it stirred within him. A codex is many pages that have been bound together to be able to flip through and read them one after another, something that one can carry with them without having to carry a whole chest full of scrolls.
Why is this codex so important to us?
Suddenly, Langenfeld smiled and stroked his son's hair with his hand. Then he leaned back and took a deep breath.
It's the story of a monk who lost faith and who carried a terrible sin.
Andrei looked at him intently.
It happened 400 years ago. 400 years is a long time, my son. And of those who lived back then, only dust remains. Dust, a story, and a book. The most powerful book on earth.
Langenfels leaned forward to prevent his wife from hearing his words.
What gives people the greatest power?
Andrei knew what his mother would have answered if she had heard the conversation. Faith. But he also knew what his father wanted to hear.
wisdom.
Langenfels nodded.
The monk was willing to do penance. A penance as terrible as his sin.
What did he do?
Andrei whispered, his eyes wide as plates.
The community in which that monk served lived in a convent celebrated worldwide for its library. Many of the works it housed were so ancient that no one knew their origins or who had written them, and only a few had a rough idea of their content. Treatises of the early popes, letters from the apostles, works of Greek and Roman philosophers, Egyptian priest writings, Israelite scrolls kept in drawers. The library contained copies of all of them, and the monk we speak of was the only one who knew them all.
Did you read them all?
I knew them by heart because he studied them thoroughly. But you should know, my son, that knowledge doesn't suit all souls. One must be a scientist not to be intimidated by the secrets hidden behind things. And certain knowledge should only be within reach of those who know how to handle it. But the monk was a simple man. Once he had studied everything in the library, he embarked on the quest for new knowledge. They say he finally found a book hidden in a cave, walled up in a niche and hidden from the world. And it would have been better for him if he hadn't found it. Better for him, but his downfall and that of others proved to be a great gift to the world.
Your downfall?
To obtain the book, he murdered 10 of his fellow brethren. The smoky light of the inn seemed to grow darker and the shadows more pronounced. Andrei fixed his gaze on a figure wearing a hood over their head, like a monk sitting alone at a table. The shadows seemed to loom larger, and Andrei's mouth went dry. Then another figure approached, and when the one at the table removed the hood, Andrei saw it was a young woman who smiled at the newcomer and extended her hand as he sat down beside her.
A scientist, my son,
said old Langenfels.
Considers all the knowledge he acquires to be like a light in the darkness of ignorance. However, the monk, after reading that last book, suddenly understood what was written in all the others. He saw how the last little light that burned in the darkness of his own world went out. The light of faith. When it went out, darkness enveloped him.
But it was just a book, right?
So it turns out it wasn't just a book. Who knows what that treaty contained that someone had hidden from the world? Maybe it was what God prohibited Moses from writing. Perhaps it was the knowledge that Adam retained after eating the forbidden fruit. Do not underestimate the power of books, my son.
Why did the monk murder his fellow monks?
They noticed that he had changed. They interrogated him, and when he refused to answer, they went to the library to find out why his studies had provoked such a profound change in him. But the monk didn't want to share the acquired knowledge and tried to stop them.
Maybe he was just trying to protect others, to prevent them from losing faith too. Right, Father?
Yes, son. Who can know? Good intentions can bring about evil just as easily as bad ones. In any case, there was a struggle. A torch fell to the ground, a bowl of oil spilled, who knows what else, and the library caught fire. Suddenly, everything began to burn. When the monk saw that he couldn't save the books, he fled, locked the door, and let his brethren become fuel for the flames. They all perished.
Andre swallowed saliva.
They managed to save most of the convent, but the library burned down completely. The monk confessed everything to his abbot, and as penance, begged to be allowed to write down all his knowledge to preserve what he had gained through the library, lost in the fire. When the abbot asked what the penance truly entailed, the monk said he wanted to be walled in. As he slowly died of hunger and thirst, he would compose the work and write the last word with his final breath. Then they could open his cell, bury his body, and preserve the book.
How dreadful,
Murmured Andre.
Indeed,
Said his father.
it was the most horrifying penance imposed for a sin like yours that one could imagine. The abbot agreed, but by the evening of the first day, the monk knew he would never be able to complete the task before dying, and he despaired.
Did the abbot let him out of the cell?
No,
Didn't you even give him food and drink to make him last longer?
the man had been walled in, Andre. No matter what he did inside the cell or how much he screamed, no one could hear him. They would only reopen the cell once enough time had passed to ensure he was dead.
But then, what could the poor monk do?
Pray.
Said Andre's father with a barely perceptible smile.
But...
Exactly. How could I pray if I had lost faith? You'll know that to maintain confidence in good, you need faith, even if not to be clear that evil also exists. That you know even if you only know a small corner of the world.
that means that...
Yes, the monk prayed to the devil.
Santa Maria, Mother of God, protect us from all evil spirits.
Exclaimed Andre, using the same tone his mother would have used. His father narrowed his eyes.
They say the devil visited the monk's cell, but evil always comes faster than good, so I suppose that's perhaps what happened. The devil offered him help and said he would write the work, and for doing so, he didn't even ask for a reward. The monk's soul already belonged to him, and he thought that most of those who read the work would lose their faith in God and come closer to him, and that was reward enough. The monk revealed his knowledge to the devil, and the Lord of Hell got to work. The next day, when the monk woke up after a restless sleep, the finished book lay on a desk.
Andre fell silent.
But what?
The monk had deceived the devil.
Andre gasped, surprised.
The monk knew that the devil would twist everything he revealed, and that his sole purpose was to sow damnation by spreading knowledge. So, the monk hid within 3 pages of the book the key that deciphered all the twisted and false words written by the devil, and added an explanation to understand that legacy of Satan. Then, he drew an image of the devil on the central pages of the book to warn all readers, laid down on the floor, and died. When, after many days, the other monks opened the cell, they were horrified. The book was there as promised. But the corpse of their comrade was as burned as the others, those whom he had condemned to die amidst the flames.
Andre let out a scream of horror. His father's eyes gleamed in the light of the few candles flickering in the inn, adding to the prevailing smell of burnt food lingering under the roof. Almost all the other guests had retired to their rooms or were snoring on the tables of the inn.
Those who were especially worthy or wise were granted permission to study the book.
Whispered Andre's father.
Where do you think all the advancements, all the new ideas that always shine forth amidst the darkness come from? Where do you think the first knowledge of alchemy emerged from?
From the book?
Where do all the dreadful ideas, wars, intolerance, persecutions, murders, bad popes, and wicked rulers come from? Eventually, it became increasingly difficult to access the book, and the existence of the book was forgotten.
How do you know all that, Father?
Before I met your mother and before you were born, I met an old alchemist.
Andrei's father hesitated for just a moment.
I met him in prison in Vienna, if you want to know precisely. I ended up there because of the envy of wicked people. The old man's fate was even worse. He had been sentenced to die in the flames. On the night before his execution, he told me this story.
Did you believe him?
Of course. Scientists do not lie to each other, and the wretched man already had 1 foot in the grave,
said Langenfels with a tense smile, but his eyes were shining.
I had to swear to him that I would never tell anyone, and I won't. But as soon as the book belongs to me, all the knowledge and all the secrets of creation will also belong to me, a scientist. And not only will I light a little lamp in the darkness, I will start a fire and begin a new era in which both ignorance and superstition will burn in flames and men will live in the light of science. And that will be my work, mine.
Do you happen to know where that codex is, Father?
It's still hidden in the convent where it was drafted.
Have you discovered which convent it is?
Do you remember that northern village? The one in the forest, next to the city built on the rocks?
Is that the one whose inn we fled in the middle of the night without paying the bill?
Well, my son, I just wanted to spare the good sleepers a discussion about money the next morning.
But you also took the ham and a small sack of flour from the pantry.
I also wanted to spare them a discussion about it.
Mother says we deceived them.
Do you want to know where the convent is or not?
Is it close to that town?
The father of Andrei snorted and shook his head.
There was that village priest.
That individual is completely drunk.
I don't know much about the life of a village priest, especially up there, where the fox and the hare bid each other good night. But I can imagine that a man is willing to drink, if offered a glass.
You offered him more than one, Father.
Yes, the individual was not at all shy.
And you also spared the innkeeper from arguing over the price of the wine.
But that old barrel deserved every drop of wine I poured into its mouth.
Did he reveal to you where the convent is?
The father smiled.
Where is it, Father?
In the midst of the darkness of the frosty November night, Andrei's father pointed towards the window. Now his eyes reflected the candlelight, and his smile grew wider and wider. The shadows turned his face into that of a stranger.
Tomorrow you will hide by the door as we agreed, and wait for me to throw you the Devil's Bible.